Max, it's great that you wanted to be a part of a show that I'm a part of. What are your thoughts about what you see happening right now with K-State as they play at Arizona tonight?
Oh, Smokey. So good to hear your voice. This is much better. No, I think you guys hit it on the head. In fact, I went to that game last year in Manhattan, which was kind of a funky non-conference game. And Tedero McMillan was fantastic, but really Arizona did not have much else going on. And that was a really nice statement game from K-State. Avery Johnson played really well. Dylan Edwards played really well. And you're 100% right. Like the pressure is all on K-State right now with how miserable their season has been. I think if you're a K-State fan, you're extremely frustrated and you really want to see Chris Kleiman and his team figure this out. And Arizona, has sort of flown under the radar as one of those teams that I think is going to be highly improved. You have Noah Fifita back. You add a ton of pieces around him and on defense. If they can get that offensive line right, and that's always like a hard thing to fix in the portal. But I think Arizona can make this a 4-quarter game and put some pressure on K-State. And, I think Edwards returning, you need him to get through a game, and you need him to be as impactful as we expect him to be. I think when you take him off the field to start that Iowa State game, it makes a massive difference.
Max, do you think they really have the depth to withstand this year? I mean, if not having Dylan Edwards for the first 3 games essentially led them to this point, how much of that hinges on him because they don't appear willing to kind of turn Avery Johnson loose in the running game anymore?
Yeah, and I think that's probably from the fan side of it. I'm sure there's a ton of frustration and finger pointing at Matt Wells and the offense so far. And I think part of it is, like, you got to remember, there still needs to be growth for Avery Johnson. He's still far from a finished product, and he's been pretty inconsistent as a starter. I think I've been at some of his games like Colorado last year where you're like, wow, he can take over a game when he's locked in, when this team has a little bit of like momentum and juice. But as we've seen early on this season, man, it's just like everything is so difficult for that team. And so, you get in these games where it's like a real nail biter against opponents where it shouldn't be that close. So, they easily could be winless to start this season. K-State's just got to figure out a way to just really reset here and get serious as they get into Big 12 play because, guys, you remember last year, Oklahoma State, Utah were supposed to be among the best in the conference. Like, you can easily go from the top to the bottom of the standings here if a few things go wrong for you.
Max, so we had the news, tomorrow's Backyard Brawl, Pitt in West Virginia. Lost a little bit of its luster when the ears fell last week, but they announced they're extending the rivalry. They're going to have a 3-year gap after this year where they don't play, but then they're going to resume it. How nice is it just to have some tradition being maintained in this day and age, as simple as that sounds?
Yeah, I think it's what we all want to see. I think you saw how awesome Kansas Missouri was last week. Like we want as many of those types of games as possible in non-conference play. And yeah, I think there's downside to having multiple Power 4 non-conference games on your schedule every year. But and West Virginia's probably played too many of them in the Neil Brown era, which is challenging. But like I think you want to see as a fan base as you end up in these conferences that have you traveling all over the country. I think you want to see those locking in those rivalry games that actually matter against fan bases you actually hate as much as possible. So that's awesome news. I'm glad that Ren Baker was able to work that out.
Yeah, I am too. Max, is it too early to see? I know what Mateer's done at Oklahoma. Is it too early to start calculating who are the best transfer pickups in the season?
I have a piece today on ESPN.com breaking down 10 guys that have really impressed me so far. Put Mateer at the top of that list. And I don't know where John Mateer is going to end up in terms of like the Heisman race and all that kind of stuff. Like, obviously team success is a big piece of that, but in December, among all the guys that were in the portal, kind of expecting that he could have a chance to, really be a season-changing, like program-changing type of player. And I think we're seeing that so for Oklahoma. That team's far from perfect, and they still have a lot of growing to do. But gosh, in that conversation too, and you guys saw it firsthand. I think the way that he is playing now, and you saw him throw the ball more last week, but The way he's playing with confidence now is really impressive. Tommy Castellanos at Florida State, obviously the star of week one. I think Bo Prabula at Missouri is really answering any questions that people probably had last year. Andy Kolnicki did a great job of using him in run packages at Penn State. Now he's slinging it, and I thought his performance against Kansas was really impressive. Had a lot of clutch moments in that one. So, quarterback position, you're going to have a ton of players that are playing at a high level. Carson Beck, obviously, and then I think it's also hit on 5 players that are non-quarterbacks in that list too. That you're already kind of seeing, especially running back Justice Haynes and Keon Lacey at Ole Miss. You're seeing guys that are already having a massive effect.
One of those guys is Mario Craver from A&M. Max, I think if I had told you you're going to write this column, in week 3, and there's going to be an A&M wide receiver transfer in it, and not that he hasn't been impactful so far, but you probably would have put Casey Concepcion here over Mario Craver, wouldn't you?
Oh, definitely. And I think in Casey had the return touchdown in the opener too. Like, he's definitely been good for them. I think that upgrade at wide receiver, I think, is just so important for Marcel Reed and for that A&M offense for Colin Klein. I looked it up. Last year, A&M plays Notre Dame. Their wide receiver group combined for 69 receiving yards in that game. I think it's going to be a different story this week when they play the Irish. I think Craver, you heard from personnel people in December when he hit the portal that he was, one of the best young players at Mississippi State, maybe in the SEC. And I think you're seeing that as a sophomore now, him take a big step forward and have a high usage role there in an offense that has great backs, but certainly we need to find some difference makers at wide receiver. I think Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion just really impressive so far.
So I think that game now it's like Notre Dame's about a touchdown favorite, but I'm very open to the idea of A&M rolling in there with the way they've looked so far. What kind of a feel do you have on that game in South Bend tomorrow?
Yeah, it's hard to say because Notre Dame's only played one game, and that's the part, that's the data point that's kind of missing there. Is like, I think you saw encouraging stuff in the way that CJ Carr was able to rally them on the road against Miami, but ultimately, like, I think if you're an Aggie fan right now, you're feeling like we're better than we were at this time last year when we played them, and you got to say, like, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Marcel Reed, and he's got a lot to prove himself, but. Gosh, I like where A&M is, like, where they're at going into this game. And I think Notre Dame, there's still a bunch of question marks. Like, certainly Jeremiah Love, you want to see him get the ball more if you're Notre Dame, and Janarius Price. Like, I think they'll probably attack this game differently than they did against Miami and probably have some regrets about that. But, I think if you're an A&M fan, like, you can definitely talk yourself into, like, we got a chance to beat these guys. It's going to take Marcel Reed playing at a really high level, and you're going to have to endure, just like the Irish did against Miami and make it a 4-quarter game.
One tweet you had, this is from yesterday, the bottom 10 Power 4 quarterbacks yards per play so far this season. And in that list includes Cade Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier. Of course, Caden Salter looks like he may have lost his job. And then Gronowski, we know Iowa, that was a slugfest, but he threw for a horrible amount of yards, not very many. Klubnik and Nussmeier. I thought Nussmeier would be way up that list, but what's going on with Clemson? And they have a physical, angry, always pissed off and play tough Georgia Tech next.
Yeah, that one is definitely I don't know if you call it a trap because Georgia Tech's good, but like that is going to be a really serious challenge for a Clemson team that just like, tough opener at home against LSU. You knew it wasn't going to be a super high scoring game because LSU has really improved that defense, but I was pretty stunned by what I was seeing last week from Clemson, the way they fell behind. And I think that, Dabo has not hesitated to say Klubnik's got to play better. And, he's missing stuff he shouldn't be missing. And I think when you got a veteran quarterback with as much starting experience as Klubnik has, like, yeah, it's a little bit inexcusable. I know it's only 2 games. And so I'm not saying that Clemson's in super, big trouble here. But, if they're not careful, they certainly could get upset by Haynes King and Georgia Tech. I think that offensively, we just haven't really seen it click yet. I think you got to see Adam Randall play at a high level at running back, and they've been a little banged up at receiver. Like this is a week where Clemson's really got to figure out how to put it all together.
Max, have you bought into South Florida completely yet?
I think if South Florida wins on Saturday, don't they have to be like in the top 5 of the
Yes.
AP poll?
I
Absolutely.
think
Yeah.
that's yes, at least the top 10, but in the top
Like
5.
we've got to lean all the way in there if they find a way to beat Miami. And I think this is a really talented Miami team. I'm so impressed by, like I know that all the attention goes to here's how bad Florida messed this up, and you have the spitting, and you have just the clock management, and all these ways that the Gators have underwhelmed. But that the game against Boise was an ass kicking, and in the game against Florida, that's not easy to do, to go drive down for a game-winning drive in the swamp like they did. I think it speaks to how much Byron Brown has improved over his time under Golish. They've got some players there at USF. They've done a good job. They're one of those programs, kind of like we see in the state of Texas. They're good at getting guys to come back home who want to transfer home and get more playing time, and maybe the career hasn't started the way they expected it to. They've done a really good job building out that roster, and clearly that team's got a ton of momentum now. And I'm not saying they are going to pull the upset, but we've certainly got to put some respect on it. And I think that probably, unless it's like just an absolute blowout, I think we're still going to be talking about USF as the favorite to grab a playoff spot the rest of the way here.
What will be interesting, Max, and we do appreciate your time. We know we got to go, or you have to go. Is it, let's say they lose 27-20, and maybe they lose by a couple of touchdowns. I sure hope that it's not going to be that, well, they're gone. They're out of the top 25. You were talking about moving up in the top 25. I hope people don't just all of a sudden forget what they did the first couple of weeks. But if they do win and they're not in the top, I don't care who has to come out. Even if the entire top 10 wins, I don't think that's possible. They have to be a part of that not the conversation. They have to get in. They just do. They don't need to be thought of as some token.
Absolutely. I think it's the exact same as I mean, certainly USF has some better wins so far, but I think it's the same deal as Boise going to Oregon last year, and they played them really close. And look, I think part of it with Boise is that they had Ashton Genty, and Ashton Genty was a guy that you had to watch every single week, and so I think that helped establish even more respect for Boise State. But Byron Brown is that kind of player too, a quarterback, and so I do think that even if they get blown out, they're probably still going to end up with a better resume and probably a better record than most of these teams that win their conference at the Group of 5 level. So, I like this USF team a lot, and Miami's going to be a tough matchup. But ultimately, I think Alex Golish is doing an amazing job, and that's a team that certainly should not slide down the rankings if they don't win this game. I think that they're probably here to stay this season.
2 Big 12 teams tonight, 4 games, 4 teams, 2 games tonight, with K-State playing at Arizona, non-conference game, then Dion and Houston. Ought to be fun. Max, we appreciate you so much. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy whatever travels you have, and we'll talk to you again next week.